Good day, everyone. This is Miss Jai, and now we are on the fourth quarter. Okay, so you've done it many times, you've heard it for years, you've taken tests and tried your best to answer them, and that is what we call reading. Now, in this lesson, we are going to talk about the nature of reading and thinking. In this lesson, we will be answering the following questions. First, what is reading? What are the different levels of comprehensions? And what is critical reading? So let's begin. Now, reading has been viewed as a process in which you view letters and words printed on a text or flashed on the screen and try to make the meaning out of them. And just like listening, writing, and speaking, reading is also a communication skills. Say, for example, when you were younger, remember, teachers showed you flashcards containing letters or words, and you're asked to read aloud. As you grew older, you began to read full sentences and tried to make sense of them. By the time you reached junior high school, you were already reading full-length texts. And they weren't just regular stories, but they are complicated stories, right? Now, when you reach college later on, you will continue to learn more and more about the subjects you like. And reading is a fundamental thing that you can use by the time you reach college or by the time you seek lifetime learning. Okay. Now, aside from that, reading, however, is not as simple as people think it is. There are many times when we can read words, pronounce the letters, but have difficulty in finding the meaning of some words. Take a look at this example. The Filipino teacher required the use of recycled materials for the project. Now, pretty easy to read, right? But the question is the Filipino teacher teaching the Filipino subject, or is the teacher a citizen of the Philippines teaching another subject? So what do you think? You realize that both possibilities are actually valid, right? Hence, meaning is incomplete unless you have more information, or this is what we call background knowledge or schema. Now, there are also times when we read words, pronounce the letters, but meaning is totally beyond us because we don't know the topic being discussed, and such scenario, what is needed is background knowledge. We needed background knowledge or the schema if you wanted to know the meaning behind it. Now, since we now know that reading is a process, it is a process because it has series of acts proceeding from one step to the next. So what are these processes? Now, first, we have perception. Perception is the step involved in reading by which the reader perceives the written symbols on the text through the use of his external senses. And then we have comprehension. It is the step involved in reading by which the reader understands the text. And then lastly, we have reaction. It is the step involved in reading wherein the reader evaluates the text which is being read. Now, in all reading occasions, however, there are various forms of comprehensions or understanding or making meaning based on what we read. That is comprehension. So what are these level or different levels of comprehension? Now, there are different levels of comprehension, but let me share with you two of them because this is the commonly things or levels of comprehension that we often notice on some readers. The first one is what we call literal comprehension. It is when the people ask questions that can be answered by simply reading the words. From the word itself, literal. So that is literal comprehension. Here, the reader reads the lines, which means they will get what is directly stated in the text. There is no other meaning being comprehended apart from what is already obvious in the text. The next one is what we call inferential comprehension. When talking about inferences, one tries to read between the lines. Now, when we say read between the lines, or this means that to reach for meaning that is not clearly or explicitly stated, but it is actually implied in the text. We seek more aside from the literal meaning of the text. This means that it is a related meaning based on what has been said, but we are trying to find more about that particular text. Okay. Now, how about critical reading? I know most of you have heard about this phrase, critical reading. Now, by reading critically, we think and analyze. Often, reading critically leads to a decision on whether or not to believe in what the author says. As the University of Leicester put it, that the aim of critical reading is to find fault, but to assess the strength of the evidence and the argument that you can find in the text. We don't just read the text, but instead we think and analyze if we believe the author or not. Now, how to think critically? There are two ways. We have inductive thinking and deductive thinking. When we say inductive thinking, you put parts together in order to come up with a generalization. As for the deductive thinking, we break things into parts from general to specific and then looks at the concept and tries to prove through examples. But if you will combine the two thinking, you need to have evidence, you need to have thinking, ways of thinking. You need to use both things, like you put parts together from specific to general and then general to specific. By combining the two, by combining inductive thinking and deductive thinking, then you are already practicing or manifesting critical reading. Okay. Now, also, as you grew older, you will experience more and more in situations that will require you to make decisions. You will at least be asked for your opinion. You will at least be, almost every time this happens, people ask you why. And to counter that, we use reasoning. Reasoning is using a reason or a cause in order to explain or justify something. You will need reasoning in order to explain why things happen, to convince people that, to believe in or support something, or to demonstrate conviction for the things you did or said. And yes, you can use what you have learned from reading in reasoning. It is natural that you will use your schema or your background knowledge, but as you become more trained in academics, always remember that your previous experiences are not enough. You understand the world better by reading and listening. It is through these skills that, apart from actual experience, that you get to acquire a better worldview filled with ideas, knowledge, and principles. You can use what you need. You can use what you read to reason. Now, in doing so, you need to consider the following questions. Okay, the first one is, what I read related to the topic, to the issue I'm going to reason about? Can I clearly establish the reason why I am using this particular reading material as my evidence for reasoning? And can I cite the sources of what I read? So with these three questions, if you'll use these three, then you can use your reading, what you have learned from reading, as you reason. Okay? Now, to end this lesson, let me leave this advice. Now, reading is a reflection of a person's way of thinking, because the thoughts he or she produces show his or her mind works. The ways we comprehend text is a reflection of one's thinking patterns. Okay? And then, yeah, now because it is the way we comprehend texts, whether we believe it immediately and wholly or ask questions first, it reflects our ways of thinking. So, there you have it. That's all for our lesson. I hope you learned something about the nature of reading and thinking. And again, this is your teacher, Teacher Jai. Thank you and see you again.